Welcome, critters! I'm Clara Jones, your devoted host of the Sacred Reading CR podcast, where we discuss and examine Critical Role episodes, plot lines, characters, and players through the lens of sacred reading practices. And today we're talking about Campaign 1, Episode 38, Part 1. And joining me is Atlas!
Hello!
So the icebreaker that I found for today is, what is your go-to karaoke song?
I don't sing in front of people ever for any reason, so I don't have one.
What is your go-to singing in the bathroom song?
Don't do that either. I don't sing.
Nothing? Not even
No,
like a little hum or like...
No. My mouth does not keep up with words set to music. I cannot do all of the pieces, so I can listen to it, but I cannot sing. I cannot keep up with it. I can't carry a tune. I can't carry a rhythm. It doesn't work. I don't do it.
What is your go-to dancing song? Like you hear it and you're like, oh my God, I'm moving uncontrollably. Like my body has to move when I hear this song.
I'm trying to think if I have one. Music is not my thing. I don't have rhythm. I guess if anything, it's like Dancing Queen by ABBA, like the whole stereotypical like
absolutely
70s, 80s. It's more likely to be useful. I really don't dance. I don't sing. I don't do music.
Wow. Wow. Music is a huge part of my mental therapy. I call it music therapy. It is one of the only reasons why I remain sane.
I love listening to music, but interacting with it is not a thing that I do.
That's so funny. Yeah, I mean, my go-to karaoke song is usually Soul Man by Sam and Dave. I don't know if you've ever come across that.
I don't think so.
But it's a really old funk song, I think from like the 70s. And I had a nanny who woke me up for school every morning because my mom was a teacher and had to leave very early in the morning in order to get to school on time. And in order to wake me up every morning, my nanny would blast that song on the living room stereo.
That's fun.
So that song woke me up every morning for several years. And so it is permanently ingrained in my unconscious.
Oh, I believe it. Yeah.
So I can probably sing it from memory at any given point in time. So that is usually my go-to karaoke. But I'm considering changing it to Uptown Funk by Bruno Mars.
Okay.
Because I think it's fun, but you know, music is very much ingrained into my day-to-day life, and I have impromptu dance sessions in my kitchen all the time.
You know, that sounds like fun. Can't relate, but it sounds great.
That's fine. That's fine. We all have our own things, right?
Yep, for sure.
Well, join us as we embark on this exciting adventure in story analysis and self-reflection in order to deepen our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. As always, we love hearing your own insights and stories as well. So please comment, like, subscribe below, and ready? All right, let's dive in. So, Vox Machina, they have just recently returned to Amon, where their home-based Greyskull Keep is, and they have cleared their names of any misdoing, wrongdoing, misdoing. I think I made up a word there.
I think you did.
But it's not underlined in my document, so wrongdoing with Sovereign Uriel in regards to their actions against the Briarwoods. In the letters they brought us as evidence, it was discovered that Lord Daxio, the former head of security for the Tal'Dorei Council, I think that's what he did, head of something. Well, he was a traitor who was in league with the Briarwoods, so Vox Machina was sent to track him down as he attempted to flee the city. They have done so successfully, and this episode opens as they bring Daxio to Uriel, where he is interrogated to learn more about Vecna, the entity the Briarwoods were connected to. Uriel sentences Daxio to immediate execution, but they punish him first as Pike casts Greater Restoration on him in an attempt to clear him of Vecna's influence. And he tells them that they interrupted the ritual too soon at the ziggurat underneath Whitestone. Apparently, it would have been best done at Winter's Crest when the veils between the worlds all are the thinnest. So then Grog beheads him with Craven Edge, and they are both very happy about it. The group also convinces Uriel to give them the bounty he had set for Daxio's capture, which was 5,000 gold, and it will be delivered to their keep soon. As they leave the palace, they decide to embark on a pub crawl, but only end up at one pub, so no really crawling involved. And they do eventually encounter Sean Gilmore, who creates a hero's feast for them because they tell him they're hungry. He's like, I got you, boo. They catch up, telling him that they are in the process of setting up a Gilmore-themed library in Whitestone. Then Vex asks him what he knows about Vecna, and he shares his knowledge of the Arch-Lich, also known as the Whispered One or the Undying King. He was born mortal, but tried to cheat death as much as possible, eventually trying to ascend to godhood 600 years ago. His ritual was thwarted, though, and he was killed, but his influence still persists because people still believe in him. So he probably still exists somewhere out there and continues in his plans to become a god somehow. Scanlan tries to get everyone to go home, but at Keyleth's urging, the party proceeds to get thoroughly drunk, and Vax has a private conversation with Gilmore telling him that he can't do the dance anymore because he is in love with someone else, but he doesn't think that they love him. And Gilmore, while disappointed, accepts this gracefully. Back at Greyskull Keep, Vox Machina finds that the guards have welcomed in Dr. Dranzel's spectacular traveling troupe, who is Scanlan's old band that they had encountered in their search for Daxio. So they chat for a while, and Dranzel elaborates a bit on the potential job he had told them about previously. It's at General Krieg's previous home, which Vox Machina have infiltrated before to kill the general who ended up being a blue dragon. They decide to go investigate it the next day, but retire to their respective rooms for the night. Scanlan invites Kaylee to his room, and they drink wine as Scanlan shares tales about his adventures. Kaylee then explains that she is from Kymel and was trained to become a bard at the College of the White Duke. She admits that she has already heard about Scanlan's tales and reveals that she heard most of the stories from her mother, Sybil. As Kaylee continues her story, Scanlan slowly realizes that Kaylee is in fact his daughter. She tells Scanlan all about the hardships that she and her mother have endured and how she was forced to learn how to use a blade and her charms to survive. Shocked by the revelation, Scanlan listens as Kaylee explains that she has been looking for him and draws a blade, saying, "Today I beat you at your own song, and now I've come to take your dignity." He tries to calm her down, as very, very apologetic and guilty about the situation. He keeps expressing his guilt, admitting that he is a scoundrel, to which Kaylee retorts that he has no boundaries and leaves a wake of people hurt. She demands that he draw his blade, and he refuses to fight her. He admits that he has made a lot of mistakes in the past, but he is trying to become a better person for someone he loves. I mean, he hasn't even visited a whorehouse in a couple months. He is doing good things. Scanlan tells her that she will find herself disappointed because he won't fight her, and he is willing to offer his life if it will make her feel better. He admits that he is remorseful for not knowing her existence, and says that knowing that she is his blood only makes him love her more. Kaylee hesitates for a moment and then lunges towards Scanlan's exposed chest, only to find herself unable to kill her father. They share a hug as Kaylee cries, and she questions why she couldn't kill him when she has spent all her life hating him. Scanlan keeps apologizing to her, and eventually she pulls away, gathers her blade, and walks out. Before leaving, she states that he is still a scoundrel, and it has kept him alive so far. Perhaps it is what kept her alive as well. She then leaves Scanlan alone in his room, and that's where they break for the episode. So, what do we think of this first half?
So it doesn't feel like a lot happens in this
But a lot
episode,
happens.
but a lot happens. I know that you and Petal kind of talked about tying up loose ends, but it seems like this one is where we start laying groundwork for larger stories. And I think that's kind of the fun transition between the Briarwood arc and the rest of the campaign.
Yeah.
Because the Briarwood arc kind of proved that it works, but it's a very contained piece. It's why we recommend it as the place to
Mm.
start. It seems like they're taking this lull to say, well, now that we've proven that it works, let's figure out where we're going next and laying groundwork for stuff that doesn't really come into fruition for another 50 to 100 episodes.
Mm.
Not that there are another 100 episodes, I know that, but like we're laying long-term groundwork that will last throughout the rest of the campaign. So it still feels very much like a lull. And rewatching this one, I was like, what even happens in this episode? But the more I think about it, the more it is just little bits and pieces that will become so important. Like even just having Kaylee show up, like that reveal, not gonna lie, it feels a little cringy. But it's so important in the long term and it grows into something beautiful and fun and interesting. Just right now, I don't love it.
I feel like everything leading up to the Briarwood arc was like the pilot episode.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Briarwood arc was like the first season of the show. And after the first season, everyone's like, we want more,
Right.
And so now Matt, in his most masterful, skillful way, is dropping all of these seeds for them to follow to the next season. Like, I forgot between last episode and this episode that they recognized the house that Dransel was talking about as General Krieg's house. And I was like, why is Matt pushing this house so hard? Like as Dransel. I was like, what? I was like, what are you doing, Matt? I was like, I can see you doing something over there. What are you doing? And then as they remembered it about being not Daxio's house, but Krieg's house, I was like, oh.
Yeah, that's one that I forgot happened entirely. So he started pushing this house, and I was like, I don't remember this. I don't remember this. I've seen this campaign so many times, and I don't remember this. Finally clicked about the same time it did for the players.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I think it's interesting to see how they lay some of this groundwork because it does. This is a somewhat uncomfortable episode to watch.
Yeah, it is.
Because it's a mix between boring and cringy.
Yeah.
And like it works out so well in the long run, but it's not the most comfortable place.
Yeah. Like I feel like the rush from capturing Daxio to interrogating Daxio was also very shortened.
Yeah, I don't really understand the whole Daxio thing.
I don't know.
I don't get it.
What happened there. And the whole interrogation felt chaotic as well.
That's a generous way to put it.
Like Scanlan kept saying like we're not going to learn anything more from him, we're not going to learn any more from him, but then like he didn't actually stand up to ask anything, just like relied on
I felt like they didn't know what they were trying to get at.
Yeah.
And neither did I, to be honest. So
and I think that's like reflected in Uriel being like, all right, come on guys, like just get on with it.
Yeah.
And then they switched to this pub crawl that isn't a pub crawl.
I don't know what was happening there either. I got very excited when Gilmore showed up because things finally started making sense.
Yeah, they're floundering a lot in the first like quarter of this half. And they're also, I mean, the players themselves are also looking for a direction to go. Like Percy even says, I just pick a direction when they're looking for the pub,
Yeah.
And they don't know where they're going. They don't know where they're supposed to be going. And so they're just kind of guessing and going with the flow. And I think that, like with how much me and Petal talked about character motivation in the last episode, that's all gone by the time we get to this start of the episode. Their character motivation has just kind of like flown off, and they were like, what are we doing? Why are we doing this? Let's go drink.
Yeah. And like it's not often that I have huge critiques of Matt's DMing style. Because overall it is very good, but one of the things he does is he puts it on the players to remember things.
Oh yeah.
And it's important to remember that they're not actually living these lives. Like they're returning to them once a week or once every other week or whatever the schedule is at the moment, and that they don't necessarily remember all those hooks that you laid, and you do have to bring them back up, and it might be good to remind people, especially when they are floundering like this.
Yeah.
And I think he kind of brought Gilmore in as that trusted NPC to give them a direction kind of thing, and to give them knowledge so that they actually had some place to go that wasn't like this sketchy entertainer group is telling us to go raid a house, but does that really fall into what we want to be doing right now? I don't know.
Yeah.
And I don't love the way that it played out in this episode.
Yeah.
But it is one of the things that I think Matt has needed to work on consistently is remembering that his players don't live in this world, and that they do need reminders, and they do need hooks, and they need those pieces that, or that, they might be a priority for the character, but the player doesn't necessarily have that same connection, and needs a little bit of help. And I think we're seeing the consequences of that DMing style here, in a very unfortunate way. It could be worse, but this is not one that I find fun to watch, and I think that's part of why.
Yeah, I mean, they're going through growing pains, literally, here. They're growing up as characters, they're growing up as players, as a group, as a company that Critical Role is. And they're trying to get used to their new shoes. Like they have these big new shiny shoes that they've been gifted, and they're now being like, okay, so as we like, I don't know why I'm getting this image in my head right now, but in the animated movie Tarzan, gets those shiny patent leather shoes and he puts them on for the first time.
Yes.
And he's just kind of like sliding around walking in them because he doesn't know how to walk in shoes. Like that's what this feels like to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that definitely has a little bit to do with it. And it's a little bit of a weird episode for a lot of reasons.
And then
but like
the Kaylee drop.
Yeah. I'm excited for later Kaylee. I forgot how much I struggle with this drop though. It's such an awkward way to do it. Like there was no other way to do it.
Well, I mean, Sam did it to himself.
Yeah,
like so much of it is Sam led that I don't know if Matt even planned. Like, I don't think Matt had any way to plan it that way. You know what I mean?
I think it was always going to happen this way, if only because that's just how Scanlan has been played for the entire game. But it is, I don't think it was planned to be that way. I think Matt would have found another way to work it in if it hadn't happened, but it feels like this was just how it was always going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, Petal and I talked a little bit about this time about how Scanlan just like instantly narrowed in on Kaylee as a fellow gnome, kind of, and how it's so integral to his backstory that he's just looking for the love of a fellow gnome. And I think that may explain some of Sam's insistence on singling her out from the troop. But at the same time, I want to know what's going on instead.
Yeah, I don't think we ever got super good insight into this particular era of Scanlan.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting. It's weird. I'm kind of glad he grows up kind of quickly.
Well, you can even see it within this conversation that they have, like the
Yeah.
quick switch between player Scanlan to like serious Scanlan.
Uh-huh.
It's instantaneous when like the rest of the group starts reacting to the threads being presented, like Hermione
Yeah.
Sybil, like he instantly switches to serious Scanlan, and I think that that is fascinating.
Yeah. I think it also gives us a little bit of an idea that the player Scanlan is very much a front,
Yes.
you know, because
Yes.
it's very, very shallow. It doesn't take
Yeah.
much for him to switch back to serious Scanlan. I like it better when we get more serious Scanlan than player Scanlan. So
Yeah. Like
we'll get there soon.
I don't think Sam was expecting Matt to start narrating what happened after Kaylee is invited to his room.
No, I think he assumed it would be another like
And it fades into
you
dark.
guys head up and fade to black
Yeah,
and
yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he starts talking and Sam was like, oh, I guess we're like role playing this. And so he like gets into the whole player persona and like you can see him like settle into it as they start this conversation. And then it switches into the specifics of the conversation and like, I grew up in Kymel. I went to College of the White Duke. Have my mother. And like that's when the facade starts to
Yeah.
disappear.
Yeah. I long term really like Kaylee as a character. So I'm excited to see her show up. I'm excited to see that arc begin. And it's again with the setting things up for the future kind of thing.
Yeah. 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 I mean, there's so much that happens in this first half. Like all of the Vecna lore too that
Mm-hmm.
we get dropped in here.
Yeah.
I think
And
that is also super important.
it is, especially for people like me who had no D&D background. Never heard of Vecna. Did not know what was going on. It was all new to me. Um,
Yeah.
so that was like, he'd come up as the whispered one and a couple things before it didn't really mean anything to me. And so now getting some of the lore was part of what made this campaign super interesting the first time I watched it because I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah.
So none of the previous mentions had been enough to really click as this is something important and big, but the
Yeah.
lore drop
Yeah.
was enough to be like, oh, I should start paying attention to that.
Yeah. And I think the players are in the same exact spot with that same exact
Mm-hmm.
realization. Because no one knew anything up until Gilmore.
Right.
I think they knew like the whispered one, and I think they knew. Did they even know Archlich? I don't think they even
I
knew
don't think so.
at that point. Yeah, they just knew whispered one, bad guy.
Yeah. And even that was kind of well, it sounds like somebody who would be a bad guy kind of thing versus
Yeah,
an actual knowledge point.
yeah, yeah. And I don't know if the group realizes the importance of this floor drop right now either.
Oh, no. I sincerely doubt that they do, and I sure didn't. It was
Yeah,
just enough to make it interesting.
because Matt has dropped the pieces. It's just that no
Yeah.
one are putting them together right now.
And they won't for a while because they're gonna go on a different arc
Uh
between now and then.
yeah. Thanks, Dr. Dranson, aka Matthew Mercer.
Yeah.
There's so many seeds and pieces that were dropped in this first half that they didn't understand, they didn't put together, they don't.
And I'm sure most of the audience didn't either.
Yeah, I mean, they're kind of understanding the importance of Craven Edge at this point in time, but not entirely.
Even that is
They're not really understanding the whole Vecna thing.
Yeah.
They're not understanding the Dranzel Krieg house thing. But the Kaylee bomb, I think, was the most important, where they were like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. And just from like a storytelling episode specific to, or a storytelling aspect specific to this episode, there we go. Let's add all the middle words. Having a whole bunch of drops that are setting things up that they don't understand, followed by one that they do understand,
Yeah.
was really important, because otherwise you lose everything that you've built up as unimportant and filler.
Yeah.
You needed that Kaylee drop to finish up the lore portion of this episode, because all of a sudden it's not just interesting information, it's information with consequences, and here's an example.
Yeah. Yeah. And it also distracts them from all the previous lore drops as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. That Kaylee drop does a lot of work in this episode.
It does. It does. It's hilarious. I mean, transitioning to the personal experiences question, I keep thinking about like my own D&D campaign that I'm running at the moment, because I've had to print out character backstory sheets for my players recently. And they're just now starting to put together the threads of their own character motivations and understandings of how the world works. And I also run into that at the beginning of every, I almost said episode that we have, session that we have. Where they're like, what are we doing? Where are we at? What's going on? And it is kind of chaotic in the first, half an hour to an hour of our gameplay, because they are also, they don't live in the world either, and so they're just like, where are we in the world? Are we on an island? Why are we on this island? What is the island called? And I'm like, you have maps. I have given you maps.
Yeah. As a player, I do that to my DM all the time. Sorry, DM.
I mean, I think that's just part of the D&D experience as well. And I was literally just having a conversation about this with my group today, because you know how cliche it is for people, how hard it is for people to find reliable D&D groups. And so we have now become the reliable D&D group that everyone knows in our extended friend web. And so we've had a lot of requests for people to join the group. And like, while I want to invite everyone, there is a bit of like exclusivity that I have to maintain, because I can't just invite everyone to join that is interested. Sad to say. I mean, if I won the lottery and I could just run D&D groups all day long, I would invite everyone to join a D&D group.
Yeah.
But I was telling them today, I was like, look, as a DM, it becomes increasingly harder to run a group with more than 4 to 5 players at a time, because of how squirrely you fucking guys are. I was like,
because you're impossible to plan for.
I know. I was like, no hate, but we do spend the first hour of every session trying to get back into the game, and the more players we add into that equation, the harder that's going to be, especially since they're all newbie players and they're all like asking me questions about mechanics throughout the entire game as well. And I was like, I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but more experienced players can exist in bigger groups, because they don't require as much gameplay hand-holding from the DM.
Right.
And I think that Critical Role is also going through that transformation right now, of transitioning from casual D&D players to professional D&D players, and not having to be like, wait, what's a strength roll again? Wait, where do I find that on my sheet? Wait, why am I looking at charisma? Wait, what is persuasion?
Yeah. I mean, that never fully goes away, no matter how experienced you are.
Absolutely.
So that's okay. But like, my group went from being weekly for like 3 years to now we might meet up every couple months for a one shot. We've given up on the campaign. There's just too much other life stuff happening. Um, but it does turn into we have to plan longer, and our DM has to be more involved at that beginning because we just are not in that world anymore. We've forgotten what the city names are. We've forgotten like character mechanics and backstories. And
Yeah.
At this point, we'd probably be better off doing true standalone one shots because we spend so much time trying to get back into the world. And it's frustrating as a player, and I'm sure it's frustrating as a DM, and um it's hard to play this game without playing it regularly.
Yeah. I don't know if I would classify it necessarily as frustrating as the DM, but it's more of a balance in my opinion, because I'm trying to balance it between like focusing on what the game is actually about, like us going through these adventures and tackling these challenges together and going through the role play and all of that, like actual gameplay stuff, and making it a fun socializing experience for my players.
Fair enough.
Because I do appreciate the benefit of having squirrely moments and of having those inside jokes that like make everyone fall into laughter for like 10 minutes and like chaos 10 minutes. Like those parts are often the most fun. But I also don't want just it to be 4 hours of us socializing with each other at the same time. I mean,
Right.
if that's what we want to do, that's great. Let's schedule another time to do 4 hours of socializing. But at the same time, it's that balance between making it just socializing focused or putting more emphasis on the gameplay portion and corralling everyone's attention.
And I think that's part of what separates different kinds of DMs. Like I am very much a one shot, one and done kind of DM.
Yeah.
I don't mind DMing. I like it in distinct pieces where I'm not tracking all of those threads.
Yeah.
And I'm not having to remind people where we were because I find it frustrating personally.
Sure.
So like we're looking at two different kinds of DMs here. You DM campaigns, I DM one shots, and it's important to keep that in mind when you're planning your own games, when you're planning your own adventures in this, of like what personally do you find interesting and fun. And like that's gonna affect what game you can run, what game you can participate in, and this game can be anything. So it's super important that you kind of have an idea of what you like and what you're getting into.
Absolutely. And have agreement among the group as to like why they are part of the group. Like, are they part of the group for the socializing experience? Are they part of the group for the gameplay? How much of a ratio is it between the two? Like at the end of the day, I would probably say it's 50-50 between session of socializing versus gameplay, especially around the holidays.
Oh yeah. This
like
time
our
of year
last,
for sure.
We always have a session that falls in December, and we've turned that into kind of like gift exchange session among the group as well. We have our own little Christmas that we do amongst ourselves. And so I do know that just those sessions are going to be more socialization heavy versus play heavy. And that's just how the dice roll at the end of the day. But I think that's important to acknowledge when you are setting up your games. And I think Matt is getting to this point of like, oh shit, this is a business. This is a company that we're trying to build, and I need to be serious. And I think that pressure gets to him sometimes. Like I do remember quite a few occasions where he's been like, focus, guys, focus to the rest of the group because they're all squirreling around inside jokes and conversations and stuff like that. And so I understand his pain.
Oh, for sure.
I understand the pressure, and I think it's also a growing experience for him as a DM to be like, all right, how do I make sure that this does still stay entertaining and fun for my player while building this behemoth that Critical Role is slowly becoming.
Yeah. Moral of the story, kids, have a session 0.
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's interesting. Yeah. I mean, we're in my group, the whole concept of bringing people in, like we're actually in a pretty good place to do that in the narrative as well, because we're currently in a pirate headquarters.
Hmm.
So it would be very easy for like one of the pirates to be like, hey, I like you guys. Can I join? You know what I mean? And so
Yeah.
narratively, it wouldn't be awkward for me to like, and someone shows up out of the blue and wants to join your team. You know what I mean?
Right. It's not like when you were on just a ship in the middle of the
Yeah.
ocean.
Yeah. And someone pops out of the water like, hello.
Like a random life raft.
Yeah, 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 exactly. But at the same time, like it would change the whole dynamic of the group too to bring someone in, and we would need to re-explain a bunch of like the inside jokes that are going on and the lore that we've just built together within the group. And like I'm not opposed to it, but at the same time I do recognize the amount of work and effort that it's going to.
Yeah, it's not an easy thing to do.
Yeah, yeah. Any other personal experiences coming to mind for you?
I think because this one was so story focused and like lore focused, all of my stuff is D&D related, and we've
Yeah.
talked a lot about that already.
I
So
can't say I've ever had an estranged daughter show up. You know,
no, no, can't relate to that.
that's not an experience that I've had.
You know,
I have had quite a bit of experience getting drunk though. So, I guess I can relate to that.
yeah, I even that like I'm a largely sober person, so I don't think I can even relate to that part.
I mean, I can definitely relate to the growing pains that they're going
Mm,
through at the moment, to just more
that's fair.
generally, is
Yeah.
just being like, me and Petal were joking about last time how we wish that we could have more closure periods or closure signals in our life of like, you have
Mm-hmm.
completed this cycle. You are ready to go on to the next. Congratulations.
Unlocked achievement.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, we do sometimes have these where we have completed a cycle, but we don't know what the
Mhm.
next cycle is yet. And I think that that's what we're seeing in this first half here.
Yeah. But we're going fun places, so it's all good.
Yeah, yeah. I am in the process of applying for a new job, which I can relate to in terms of cycle
Mm.
completions, which I think is something that you can also relate to.
Yeah, we're a couple months into the new job, and it still feels so new.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it is like I'm still in the old job at the moment, but looking for a new one. And I feel like I have my sights set on the next cycle, but it still hasn't really taken shape.
Yeah, see, because I think I'm slightly past that, where we've started the new cycle, but we haven't gotten far enough into it to figure out what it actually looks like.
Hmm.
So it still just kind of feels a little squirrely of like, what is going on?
Hmm.
But in a less stressful way than the what do I do next situation.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. I'm in the what do I do next situation, and it is not fun.
yeah, I don't miss that. Good luck.
Yeah, I'm throwing darts at the moment. I'm like, let's try that. Let's try that. Whichever one lands, I'll go in that direction, but the darts are still flying. They're taking a very slow time.
Been there, done that. It works eventually.
Yeah, they go into this like gray wall of mist, and I'm like, did they hit? I don't know. Did they?
We'll find out.
We'll see. So
Yeah.
that's also hashtag relatable. I wish I could. I mean, I guess I do have a lot of lore drops coming into my life right now of people being like, here's a potential lore drop. Here's another potential lore drop. And I'm like, but which one do I both? 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 Both?
Neither? I don't know. Yeah. The uncertainty is hard, but it works out eventually, we hope.
Ideally. I mean, something will happen.
Yeah.
at some point. I am in the process of going to check out General Krieg's house in my own life. We'll see whether I find anything or not. I might find the remnants of a blue dragon. I may not find anything.
And you won't know for a while. You gotta get
I
there
know.
first.
Yeah, it's not gonna happen. I got invited to something at the beginning of February, and so like I'm not even gonna know until like midway through February, end of February.
Mm-hmm.
Who knows? So
Patience.
I'm just on
Hard,
my
but
non-pub crawl at the moment.
yeah. Fun times.
Well, what are we gonna do about it?
I think the thing that comes out of this episode is that a little bit of patience goes a long way.
Ooh.
You know, it's a lot of maybes and no answers.
I hate it.
So I think the lesson here is that let things play out, be patient with them, and you'll end up with a great story eventually. But nothing is instantaneous, nothing is fast. You gotta wait.
I don't like that answer. Try again.
I know you don't. I don't either, but it's not wrong.
Patience is not my virtue. I don't know if that has become obvious or not throughout the time that we've been doing this podcast, but it is not my virtue. I am not, if I know there's an end coming, like if I'm in the waiting room at the doctor's office, and I know my appointment is in 3 hours, I will be patient for those 3 hours. It's fine. But if there's no end in sight, if there's no certainty that something is coming after those 3 hours, I am the most impatient motherfucker.
I like to tell people that patience is a learned skill and that the only reason I succeed at it is lots of practice because it does not come naturally to me either. But I've gotten a lot better at it. I'm
Okay.
not good at it,
How
but
do
I've
you
gotten
practice?
better.
How does one practice patience?
Being put in situations where you have no choice repeatedly.
Well, how do you know if you're practicing patience in those situations versus not practicing patience in those situations?
It's the mental response to the situation you're in. It's the amount of stress that you are experiencing
Mm.
versus the response that you have personally. Whereas, like, I used to obsess over things. I still do in a lot of ways, but there's a difference between obsessing over it to the point where it impacts my life to acknowledging that I have to wait for something to happen and that I should focus on something else in the meantime.
Mm.
It's a change in mindset, a change in practices. It's a whole mindfulness thing. You got to figure out what works for you, as most things are, which is not a helpful answer,
It's
but it's
not.
what
I
I
don't
got.
like it. My whole body is rebelling against the answer right now.
I believe it.
I wanted to just like close my laptop and run away from that answer. Oh man. Yeah, I am trying to practice patience in my life right now. It is, I don't know if or not.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not an easy thing to do for most people.
I mean, I know how to make lists. I know how to make strategies. I know how to make schedules. I know how to stick to those schedules. But it's my emotional experience of those schedules that I think is the key. And I'm also coming out of a depressive episode, which doesn't help. And so it's remembering and reminding myself in a minute to minute basis that there is a more beneficial outlook to adopt in that situation, in that minute to minute basis, more so than just hating everything else.
Easier said than done, but yes.
Easier said than done. I know, but it's constant. Like, I think it's vigilance of your mood and a willingness to look at it critically on a minute-to-minute basis, which
Yeah.
takes a lot of mental energy and emotional energy at the end of the day, too.
Oh yeah, it takes spoons. That
It does take
it
spoons.
yeah, it's rough. And you know, not easy to do, not quick to do. Like anything else, it takes time and it takes a lot of mental effort that some
Mhm.
people just don't have in the moment. And I've
Mhm.
been there, I've done that.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
understand.
Mhm. I lately have been trying to make my reconnection with music, particularly as a
Fun.
form of mood regulation.
You know, that sounds great.
And using it as a tool to be like, okay, I am recognizing the shittiness of my mood at the moment, and I am deciding to, at the very least, if I cannot like shift the mood myself, I can at very least find a song to put on that may or may not shift it for me.
Yeah.
Which I think is a lot more accessible of a mood regulation tool than others, maybe. Like, for example, I have not been able to read anything lately. It's just, I cannot bring myself to crack open a book. I can't do it. I don't know why there's that block there, but it has not been happening.
Yeah, and there's something to be said in that in letting something happen and letting that adjust your mood versus having to do something to adjust your mood.
Yes.
And yeah, I have definitely been in places where doing something about it was not in my capacity,
Yeah.
but turning something on and just seeing what happened was.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it's not a bad strategy. It's very valuable to know what can shift your mood when you don't have the ability to do it yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the stage that I'm in right now is music therapy stage. Because at the very least, I can put on some type of music that may or may not do something to me.
Yeah. I think it's important to know what works for you, and it sounds like music is a great way for you to go.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anything else we want to add before we wrap up this therapy session?
I don't think so. It really was a therapy session all the way through.
And we're not even the ones who are like being confronted with estranged daughters. So
No, we're dealing with our own problems through D&D, which is the whole conceit of everything.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, good luck to both of us. We can do it. I believe in us.
Mm-hmm. 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 Oh yeah. Well, I guess I have to wrap things up. That's what comes next, right? I can't just keep saying yeah. So these are powerful things we're talking about here. And audience, we definitely encourage you to share your own thoughts and feelings and insights and stories with us as well. We'd love to know how Critical Role has impacted you in your own lives. Have you ever had an estranged daughter show up in your life? Let us know. Special thanks to Atlas for joining me. It's been a pleasure.
Always happy to be here.
Next time, we'll be discussing Campaign 1, Episode 38, Part 2. And again, Atlas will be joining me. As always, I'm looking for more co-hosts and guests. So if you're interested, please hit me up. In the meantime, please comment, like, subscribe below. Follow us on Tumblr at Sacred Reading CR. And until next time, may all beings be peaceful. May all beings be free. And be the chaotic good you wish to see in the world. Take care, guys.
Bye.